Goeiedag, welkom weer bij een nieuwe aflevering van Europa Draait Door. De podcast waarin we ons weer zullen laven aan al die verrukkelijke ellende in de wereld. Dat doe ik natuurlijk met de man die elke ochtend weer opstaat met een shotje zwart gal, Arend Jan Boekestijn.
Wat is dat, een shotje zwart gal?
Ja, ik denk dat jij dat elke ochtend neemt. Want anders krijg je toch al die zwartgallige teksten niet uit je mond elke ochtend.
Ik ben dus een verzuurde oude man. Nou, een leuk begin van de podcast.
Ja, ik moet je altijd weer even op je plek zetten, hè? Hey, we hebben wel een bijzondere podcast, want wat gaan wij doen deze week? Wie hebben wij te gast?
Ja, we hebben niet elke dag, elke week een Nobelprijswinnaar, maar nu hebben we een echte, met een baard ook nog. De beroemde Paul Krugman, de econoom, hè? En die spreken we in Pakhuis de Zwijger in Amsterdam. En dan gaan we natuurlijk praten over Trumps economische beleid, maar ook zijn buitenlandse politiek. Ik verheug mij.
Ik ben heel benieuwd, ja, want Paul Krugman is inderdaad niet de eerste, de beste. En wat leuk is dat Krugman is natuurlijk echt een grootheid, ook in de Verenigde Staten. En spreekt zich vooral, hij was altijd columnist bij de New York Times. Tegenwoordig heeft hij zijn eigen Substack. Maar valt Trump natuurlijk voortdurend aan. En Trump valt Krugman zelfs aan, hè? Dus hij gaat zelfs een beetje bij hem onder de huid van de president zitten, als hij hem toch weer pakt op allerlei beleidsmaatregelen die hij neemt. Maar inderdaad, we gaan het met Krugman hebben over de Amerikaanse economie, maar natuurlijk ook over de staat van de Amerikaanse democratie, waar Krugman zich ontzettend veel zorgen over maakt. Want welke kant is Amerika onder Trump op aan het bewegen? Hij is inmiddels bijna 1,5 jaar alweer bezig met zijn tweede termijn. En ja, er zijn natuurlijk dusdanig veel indicaties, waar Krugman het ook over zal hebben, aan te wijzen, waarop je toch wel kan stellen dat Amerika behoorlijk met de pijl op de wortels van de democratie aan het hakken is, toch?
Absoluut.
Ja. Horen jullie straks dat gesprek. Maar eerst, Arend Jan, wil ik met jou even beginnen over toch wel opmerkelijk nieuws van deze week. Want wat zien we plotseling gebeuren de afgelopen dagen? Steeds meer Oekraïense drones die terechtkomen op NAVO-grondgebied.
Ukraine has blamed Russia for taking control of one of its drones and steering it into Estonian airspace when it was shot down by a NATO fighter jet. This is just the latest in a series of cross-border drone incidents that have caused political uproar in the Balkan states. Estonian police are still searching for the downed aircraft, which the country's military said had been shot down by a Romanian NATO jet on a training mission. Estonia's defense minister, Hanno Pevko, said the drone was presumed to have been targeting Russian positions.
Arend-Jan, dit is toch wel echt opmerkelijk, hè? Afgelopen dagen zien we ineens Oekraïense drones. Eerst in Letland, Finland ook, afgelopen week in Estland. Die daar plotseling opduiken en ook soms gewoon daar neerstorten met alle gevolgen van dien. Hoe kan dit zomaar?
Ja, weet je, Oekraïne die heeft dus heel veel drones en valt ook heel succesvol Rusland aan. En neemt daarbij ook wel steeds meer risico's dat ze echt over NATO-grondgebied gaan. Dat is het ene verhaal. Het andere verhaal is het ook zo dat de Russen in staat zijn om die drones over te nemen en dan expres naar het NATO-gebied te sturen.
Hoe doen ze dat dan?
Ja, je kunt dus met jamming en zo kan je de besturing overnemen. Hè? Je kunt dat oplossen door die drones aan draadjes te doen. Weet je wel? Dat doen ze bij de trenches, bij de loopgraven. Maar dat kan natuurlijk niet met die drones die honderden kilometer of zelfs duizenden kilometers moeten vertrekken. Dus dan hebben de Russen ook een kans om dat over te nemen. En daar zijn ze goed ook in. Hè?
Ja, dus het is niet zo dat die Oekraïnse dronepiloten ineens dronken zijn of zo?
Nee, dit is gewoon oorlogvoering. En het is overigens wel zo dat de Baltische staten zijn ook wel een beetje boos daarover. Ze vinden kennelijk ook dat Oekraïne een beetje te veel risico neemt.
Ja.
De grootste schuld ligt natuurlijk bij Rusland.
Maar wat ik wel opmerkelijk vind, en dat zag je ook vorig jaar, hè, toen er ineens een drone boven Polen opdook. Dat was dan weliswaar een Russische drone. Dat de NAVO dan reageert, hè, want die zitten in al die lidstaten daar, ook in Estland, in Letland en zo. Die gaan dan met vliegtuigen de lucht in om die drone, dat in dit geval een Roemeens gevechtsvliegtuig, hè, wat daar gestationeerd stond in Estland, om die drone uit de lucht te schieten. Dan denk ik altijd, dat is toch met een kanon op een mug schieten?
Nou kijk, weet je, de ellende, ze hebben geen ander instrument. Je zou eigenlijk dus een laser moeten hebben, dat zou heel goedkoop zijn. Maar die bommen onder een F-16 zijn hartstikke duur. Zo'n drone is soms maar een paar duizend euro, soms 20.000 euro. Dus het is inderdaad heel merkwaardig om daar heel veel geld aan te doen. Maar ja, wat moet je doen? Je moet natuurlijk toch wel tegenwicht bieden tegen de Russen. Het wachten is op een laserkanon.
Ja, dat zou het wat makkelijker maken. Maar ondertussen zijn de gevolgen van dit alles ook best wel groot. Hè? Want nota bene in Letland, daar kwam een Oekraïense drone neer op een energieinstallatie. Dat leidde er zelfs toe, dat zorgde voor zoveel druk op de Letse regering, dat de premier daar moest opstappen. Ja, dat is nogal wat.
Ja, het is een beetje onduidelijk wat er nou precies aan de hand is. Het was sowieso al zo dat die regering erg instabiel was geworden. En voor zover ik het begrepen heb, wordt het ook heel erg gebruikt om die regering... De oppositie gebruikt dit ook om de regering heel erg onder druk te zetten. Ik vind het niet erg handig als je in zo'n gevaarlijke situatie verkeert om dan ruzie te gaan lopen maken.
Nee, zeker niet. Ja, Evika Selina heet ze, de Letse premier, die dus inderdaad als gevolg van dit drone-incident, dat was dus wellicht, zoals jij het zegt, Arend Jan, een druppel op een al behoorlijk gloeiende plaat daar. Maar toch, het is natuurlijk best opmerkelijk dat zoiets de positie van de premier kan kosten, dat een Oekraïense drone daar terechtkomt. Daarnaast zien we wel, Arend Jan, dat ook al gebeurt dit nu, hè, en zijn de Russen dus blijkbaar in staat om sommige Oekraïense drones richting het NAVO-grondgebied te begeleiden. Maar dat Oekraïne wel maar doorgaat met tot diep in Rusland van alles en nog wat aanvallen. Hè? Ze zijn daar ongelooflijk goed in.
En ook echt de ene olieraffinaderij na de andere. Hè? Het heeft twee gevolgen. A, ze krijgen dus problemen gewoon met de olievoorziening. Hè?
De Russen.
Maar B, het allerbelangrijkste, je brengt dus de oorlog bij de Russen thuis. En die laten dus hun wanhoop zien, hè? Dat ze ervan balen dat er weer is wat aangevallen. En dat zet weer een druk op Poetin. Hè? Die overigens nu in een bunker in Krasnodar schijnt te zitten.
Ja.
En nog maar met weinig mensen praat. Dus kennelijk is hij ook een beetje bang voor een coup dat hij daar zit. Hè?
Weet je nog in het begin van de oorlog, hè, 2022, hoe de Russen op de staatstelevisie Oekraïne belachelijk aan het maken waren. Toen gingen ze nota bene tijdens een live-uitzending het luchtalarm nadoen, om maar de suggesties te wekken. Ach joh, die Oekraïners, dat is zo'n slap leger. Dat is wel het laatste waar we ons zorgen over moeten maken. Moet je horen. Ongelooflijk. Je hoort zo ook een beetje lachen op de achtergrond. Dan moet je nu eens kijken.
En nu zitten ze echt in het probleem. Hè? Kijk, laten we wel zijn. De Oekraïnse aanvallen zijn zeer succesvol. Poetin is duidelijk bang aan het worden. En er is sprake van een lichte terugtrekking van Russische troepen. En heel veel doden. Hè? Gaat niet goed met Rusland.
Wat ik toch wel echt knap vind, is dat Oekraïne, hè, terwijl ze dus die oorlog in eigen land al jaren tot waanzin moet drijven natuurlijk, hè, met alle gevolgen die het heeft. Je zou toch ergens denken dat je als land vooral bezig bent met overleven en vooral bezig bent om niet nog veel meer grondgebied te verliezen. Maar in plaats daarvan zijn die Oekraïners dus tijdens die oorlog ingeslaagd om wereldspeler te worden als het gaat om oorlogsvoering via drones. Ja. Die ontwikkeling die ze daar hebben doorgemaakt in de afgelopen jaren. Dat
is ongelooflijk.
Ja, toch? Daar staat toch iedereen bij te kijken en te applaudisseren van hoe zijn jullie hiertoe in staat gebleken, zeg.
Het hele land is een soort laboratorium geworden voor droneproductie. Met dat elke 2 maanden worden de beste modellen, weet je wel, nog weer verbeterd. En dan komen er weer nieuwe modellen. Wordt geëxperimenteerd. Soldaten die drone het best bedienen, krijgen prijzen. Het is echt een krijgsmacht van formaten. Battle hardened, zoals dat zo mooi heet.
Ja.
En het allermooiste vind ik dat Trump die stuurt ze dus geen wapens meer. Wij moeten die kopen in Amerika, hè? Maar dan wordt er ook weer mee getreuzeld. En nu hebben ze zelf ook lange afstandsraketten. Dus toch ongelooflijk. Echt. En sterker nog, wij gaan die raketten bij hen kopen. Ik vind dat werkelijk, wat een land is dit.
Ja, ongelooflijk. Wat een winnaarsmentaliteit in die zin. En ze zijn er dus daarmee wel in staat om de Russen behoorlijk zenuwachtig te maken. Al moeten we inderdaad niet zien dat er te veel Oekraïnse drones op NAVO-grondgebied terechtkomen. Want dan kan dit verhaal een stuk ingewikkelder gaan worden de komende tijd.
De hoofdgast.
Have a seat. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Krugman, in during this live recording of our podcast, Europa Draait Door.
Well, thanks for having me. Hope that I can deliver some value.
We
Am I
expect,
supposed to be funny?
well, whatever you wish.
Okay.
I mean, the world is not in a very funny place at the moment. Mr. Krugman, Arend Jan just introduced you in Dutch, told the audience that you have like 500,000 readers on your Substack.
578,000, but who's counting?
That's an impressive number, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we were wondering, because I mean, it looks like you're still working like 7 days a week, writing a lot. You give a lot of interviews still as well. Even in the coming night, you're giving an interview, I've heard.
Yeah.
We were wondering what your secret is, what your source of energy is. And what we found is that a lot of pictures of you with your cat.
Well,
That
yes.
seems the one who helps you a lot, we heard.
He is often not. He would prefer that I do less. It's.
What's his name, by the way?
This is Jack.
Jack, right.
And he will often come, as I'm trying to do some writing, he'll try to stop me. But anyway.
Arend Jan, is that why you start to have cats as well, by the way?
I like cats very much. Cats are the epitome of arrogance and wisdom.
Right.
They're so terribly arrogant. They don't even watch you in the face if you say something to them.
True, yeah. And Mr. Krugman, we saw that you wrote on your Substack recently, because you're in Europe for a few weeks already, right? You've been to Italy, now here in the Netherlands. That I'm still in Europe, you wrote, where one of the luxuries I'm experiencing is not having to think about Donald Trump and a nightmarish state of U.S. politics 100% of the time. Well, guess what we're here for tonight?
Well, yes, it's unavoidable. In another time, we might be talking about bad things happening elsewhere. But what can I say? Right now, the United States is the center of the world, and not in a good way.
Yeah. We're going to discuss with you the consequences of the war in Iran at the moment, the state of American economy and politics, and also the relationship between the US and Europe. And to start with the consequences, especially the economic consequences of the war in Iran, we can show you a ticker that shows us a tracker, actually, the amount of money that the US has spent on the war in Iran. It's almost 87 billion at the moment. It's an impressive number in a way.
Yeah, although in many ways that's almost the least of it. I mean, yes, it's an awful lot of money, and if this money had been spent on this is enough to keep millions of children fed for a year. It's enough to keep hundreds of thousands of children in healthcare for a year. So it's a lot of money, but the consequences are much bigger than just the direct spending on the war. Ultimately, the most important thing is that an awful lot of the world's commerce normally passes through the Strait of Hormuz. It's 20% of the world's oil, a large part of the world's fertilizer, liquefied natural gas, helium, which turns out to be not just for party balloons, but for semiconductor manufacture, right? So this is a huge disruption. Unfortunately, the costs are falling everywhere, and not just, in some ways hitting other parts of the world worse than it hits the United States, although we're paying a heavy price as well.
Oh, and we've seen that for President Trump, there's no easy way of getting out of this war at the moment. And wasn't he the one who promised his electorate when he became president for the second time, no forever wars?
Yeah, he promised a lot of things, but that was one of them. He also promised to cut energy prices in half, and the grocery prices would come down on day one. So these were all, but he had no way of making the energy price promises, the price promises come true. But there was a simple way to not have foreign wars, which is to not start one. He didn't honor that promise.
As simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, there are wars. I'm not a pacifist. Wars sometimes must be fought. But this one was purely. There was no strategy. There was no necessity. In fact, President Obama negotiated a pretty good deal with Iran, which Trump ripped up really just because it had Obama's name on it.
Yeah.
And so this was completely unnecessary, and it was just, it was ego. It was him looking for a way to change the subject from all the other things that are going wrong on his watch. And now here we are with this global mess.
Yeah, prices are going up. I mean, people are feeling the consequences of this war.
Yeah, and there's a lot worse probably to come. I will say that I talk to two kinds of people about this. I talk to financial types who are upset but not totally, as we would say, hair on fire. And then there are people who are actually experts on energy who are hair on fire. Because we're still living sort of in a fool's paradise. We've lost 14 million barrels a day of global oil production, and we're meeting that partly by drawing down inventories. So we're actually burning through 6 million barrels a day of oil that's in storage, but we're running out of that. So things will get much worse unless there's a peace very soon, and there's no sign of that. The United States, we're a rich country, so people are angry and upset. Europe is a rich continent, so people are angry and upset. People in Africa, people in the poorer countries of Asia, it's more than being upset. There are actually, people will be impoverished and in some cases die because of this.
Yeah. Interesting thing is, last weekend, Donald Trump was asked about the consequences for Americans, actually, the cost of this war. And he basically said, well, that's none of my business. Let's have a look.
The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about American financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all. That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, so apparently...
This was a classic, it's called a Kinsley gaffe, where a Kinsley gaffe is when a politician unintentionally tells the truth.
Yeah. But what I find so depressing is that the Iranians have been attacked by all these bombardments. Now they have a damned good reason to develop a nuclear weapon in the next 10 years. And that's his main argument.
Well, it wasn't really, that's the after-the-fact rationalization.
Yes.
Right, what he really wanted, it's clear, was he wanted a victory. He attacked Venezuela and he deposed one vicious dictator and replaced him with another vicious dictator, but he thought he could pull that off in Iran, and he wanted a short, victorious war, which is a slogan that comes from Russia going to war with Japan in 1905, which didn't work out well. But this is, or it's Argentina invading the Malvinas, looking for a way to distract from his problems with a war, and as usually happens, war doesn't actually follow your script. And so that's what's really going on now. It's saying, we needed to do this to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon. But as I was saying, we had a perfectly good agreement on nuclear development that was negotiated by President Obama. And Trump ripped it up because we can't have anything that Obama did working.
Well, the interesting thing is, because of this war, his approval ratings have fallen since the lowest point since his second term in office. Yeah. The midterms are coming up in November. What is your expectation? Will the electorate, the Trump voter, move away from him because of what he's doing in Iran?
Well, Iran is only the latest bit. I mean, he was already falling drastically in the polling because of everything, because he hasn't fulfilled his promises on prices, he hasn't fulfilled his promises on many things. The anti-immigrant policies, even for all of the nastiness that often prevails in politics, even so, people are outraged and horrified at what we've been doing. And we had some local, state and local elections last November, which were a huge defeat for Trump and his allies. But one of the things that's worrying is that they are doing everything they can to steal the midterm elections.
In what way?
The U.S. system with the games they can play with districting, that has already. We now think that in order to take the House of Representatives, the Democrats would have to win the popular vote by 4 or 5 percentage points, which they probably will do because people are so upset, but who knows what else they will try. But yeah, the electorate is turning. A lot of people who naively voted for Trump because they thought he would bring down grocery prices have turned hard against him. But we're still very much in danger.
Well, we have to say, we have a clip of Trump during his campaign in 2024 when he promised to bring down grocery prices because the Democrats, if they would have been in power, it would have been much worse.
Former President Trump surrounded himself with grocery store items at his Bedminster Golf Club Thursday, talking about the cost of food.
Grocery prices have skyrocketed. Cereals are up 26%. Bread is up 24%. Butter is up 37%. And many items are up at much higher rates than that. Now Kamala is reportedly proposing communist price controls. She's running on the Maduro plan. We call it the Maduro plan, like something straight out of Venezuela or the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable to listen to this, right? This is only 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that this wasn't going to happen, that he had no plan at all. Or I knew, but unfortunately, a lot of voters are fairly low information, and I guess people were upset. Prices did go up a lot, mostly in the early aftermath of COVID, because there was a lot of disruptions, and also because of Putin invading Ukraine, which drove up a lot of prices. But and people thought, they remembered that things were better in 2019, and Trump was president then. And what they didn't understand is things were better in 2019 because we had not had a pandemic and because Putin hadn't invaded Ukraine yet. So anyway, now we're stuck with, for the time being, with this guy. And
but what do you think? Are we approaching a turning point, especially among his own voters? Because you even see influential Trump supporters like Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene, who are also turning against him out loud, saying we cannot support this guy anymore.
Well, yeah. I mean, there has been a huge swing. I mean, if you actually look, one of my friends and contacts, G. Elliott Morris, who does a lot of polling analysis, he identifies what he calls low information voters. And that's not a pejorative. He's not insulting them. He's just trying to identify. And it's actually people who don't know which party controls Congress. That's a low information voter by his definition. They voted heavily for Trump in 2024, and they have now turned massively against him because the results are not there. The results are just bread and butter issues are going the other way. So the only question really is not will the American public turn against him. It has already. The question is whether they can rig the system, whether we've gone far enough down the authoritarian road that we can't turn away, even if the public turns against it.
Do you expect these midterm elections in November? Are they going to be free and fair in any way?
No, I mean they're already rigged in terms of the way that the vote is set up. There will be attempts to interfere. There may be. We don't know how it will play out, but there may be. ICE, the federal immigration agents, may show up at polling places and try to intimidate voters. Anything is on the table. Now, the most encouraging thing that's happened for someone like me is believe it or not, the election in Hungary, which the tactics that the U.S. Republican Party is trying to use to turn us into a one-party state are in many cases actually specifically copied from Orbán and Fidesz in Hungary, and they really, Orbán really had built a really strong dike, if you like, against losing power. But if the sea is high enough, it overtops the dike, which is what happened in Hungary, and that's what we're hoping will happen in the United States in November.
Mm-hmm. How worried are you, Arend Jan, in the way the U.S. is moving towards less and less a democracy, and maybe moving toward an Orbanian Hungary-style country?
I very much fear that there is this autocratic temptation. Yeah? So if the ICE people go to the electoral posts and intimidating people, then he can really rig it. It would have a tremendous influence in the world because all the crooks in the world will say, oh, we can do this too. Yeah? And it's now justified because the democratic bacon in the world is doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. I'm really afraid that it's going to happen because Trump is surrounded by people who are always yes-saying. Huh?
I would like to show you a shocking example of this. It comes from a judicial hearing in the Senate in the US, where nominated federal judges have to undergo a hearing, have to undergo questioning by senators. They will be appointed because Trump appointed them. There is a majority for Republicans in the Senate, but there are still Democratic senators, obviously, and they can ask these federal judges questions. And there's one Richard Blumenthal. He's from Connecticut. And he asked a very simple question to these newly appointed judges. Who won the 2020 election? Have a look.
Who won the 2020 election?
Senator, I wanted to be mindful of the canons here. I know this question has come up many times in these hearings, and it's become an issue of significant political dispute and debate. So with that, I'd say that President Biden was certified the winner of the 2020 election.
He won the election. Is that your response?
Senator, I think my response is he was certified as the winner by counting the electoral.
So you're unwilling to say he won the election. How about you, Mr. Roberts?
I apologize, Senator. I have the same answer as my colleague, Senator.
Same answer
Senate,
as the previous one?
the previous nominee. The Senate did.
Mr. Coons, how about you?
Thank you, Senator. And I have the same answer as Mr.
Same
Hendershot.
answer. Unwilling to say that Joe Biden won the election, correct?
As Mr. Hendershot said, it has become a matter of political concern, and Joe Biden.
Well, it's a matter of
certified the
political
winner.
concern, but it's also an issue of fact. I am amazed and really appalled that nominees for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench are unwilling to respond on an issue of fact, which I think really reflects not only on your honesty, but really on your fitness to be a federal judge, because you are supposed to be independent. And I think it's pretty irrefutable that Joe Biden won the election, but you're unwilling to use that word because you are afraid. You are afraid of what? President Trump?
Sorry, I fall silent every time I see this clip. What does this tell you, Mr. Krugman?
First of all, if I might say, Blumenthal, I mean, it's acceptable. He's lying when he says he's amazed. He knew that was the response. Right? We all understand that. No, we are much further down this path than many people were willing to admit until recently. We essentially have a would-be dictator as president. We have a party that is completely now behind him in this authoritarian push. The question now is not what he and his party will try to do. The question is, what can they achieve? How far can they go? So we are very much, the clock is very close to midnight on U.S. democracy. And if you know, it's an uncomfortable thing. Certainly a lot of people that are kind of in my current business, which is commentary and policy analysis and all of that, would like to stay away from it, would like to turn down the temperature and avert their eyes and let's talk about the sources of GDP growth or something like that. And you know, I do some of that, partly because these things remain important and partly because I need to keep my own sanity.
But why is it? Are people just in denial of
there's
what's
a lot of
really
denial.
happening? Or why is it that they don't want to talk about it?
Oh, because it is harsh, it's political. People will yell at you. I mean, if you, even now, I know journalists who get upset when people send them hateful letters and emails, right? It's, oh my God, I must have done something wrong. Whereas, you know, having been through this for a long time now, I've reached the point where if I don't get a lot of hate after I write something, I know that I've wasted the day. So, but it's obviously people, there's still, I think it's mostly going away now, but there was a long time when many people did not want to believe that we're living in the world we're actually living in, because it's an uncomfortable and frightening thing. So, but you know, there we are. It's twilight in America, to turn Reagan's phrase around. We are very close to losing it all, but not beyond hope. That's the thing. We can still we do what we can.
Yeah.
And Arend Jan, in the meantime, here in Europe, we behave sometimes like we're paralyzed about what's happening in the US. We don't really know how to deal with the White House, with President Trump. Sometimes we try to be as kind as we can. Sometimes you see a European leader telling him off, actually. Doesn't happen a lot, but what would you advise, Mr. Krugman, to European leaders? What's the best way to deal with Donald Trump?
No, the most important thing, and
you've seen the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, the Dutchman.
Yeah, he's been awful. He keeps on talking. Look, Rutte keeps on saying, "Oh, there's no way that the European Union can stand up to Russia without the United States." My God, Look, just economics, right? The European Union. I should have the number exactly in my head, but roughly speaking, the U.S. has a GDP of like $30 trillion. The EU is like $25 trillion. Russia is more like $4 trillion. The EU is a superpower if it chooses to be one. Mm-hmm. It certainly has the resources to stand up against foreign aggression, to stand up for democracy. It does not need the United States. It would be nice if we could be allies the way we once were, but pretending that this is still the America that you were used to is just delusional, and it delays the process of taking things on your own shoulders. I mean, I'll give you a real, this is happening as we speak. Trump abandoned Ukraine. More than that, he's actually pro-Putin. That's obvious now. Mm-hmm. And not a dollar of U.S. aid has flowed to Ukraine in the past year. It's all the aid is now from the EU. And guess what? Ukraine survives. The EU, with barely, it's almost rounding error relative to the European economy to supply Ukraine with enough money to keep on defending its democracy. And this is a demonstration, actually, of European potential independence, that you don't need the United States to defend your eastern gate. And and there's much more of that. I mean, in terms of, if we actually get into the idea that the United States can punish Europe by imposing tariffs, first of all, Europe is not that dependent on the U.S. market, and also, U.S. companies basically sell as much in Europe as European companies sell in the United States. The idea that Europe is the weaker partner here is just the phrase, learned helplessness. Europe has spent too many years relying on the United States to take national security decisions, but now stand up for yourselves.
Yeah. Arend Jan, it doesn't seem that we in Europe believe that we are a superpower, that we are able to make these big decisions and don't be as afraid of Trump's warnings as we probably are.
We have a huge common market, and also we are investing in defense to a very large extent. And what I find really interesting is that we know we can't trust Trump anymore. So now we have to rely on Ukraine and Ukraine rockets. So we have a much more healthy relationship with Ukraine because European security starts with cooperation in Ukraine.
Yeah. Is the US still an ally?
I'm afraid that Trump is not an ally. Trump is an ally of Putin.
Yeah, and we should mention that it's not just that Trump and those around him don't want to play the role of guarantor of global freedom and all that. They specifically dislike Europe. If you look at the rhetoric, especially actually from people like Vice President Vance, but there is a specific dislike of Europe for exactly the reasons that Americans used to value Europe. There's the democratic values, there's the belief in, to some extent, in trying to make a decent society, and to some extent the openness, cultural openness. And okay, we all have issues with immigration, but some notion that identity, membership in a society is about more than blood and soil. And those are the things that, look, I mentioned Orban again. It's not just that the U.S. right has been modeling itself on Orban. The Trump people went all out. I mean, we had the Vice President of the United States campaigning for Orban in this last election, which, now one good thing that I don't think Trump and his people have figured out is that they actually have a very powerful role in foreign elections. If Trump steps in to support someone, that probably dooms them. I mean, we have a very good prime minister in Canada, thanks to Trump, who opposed him.
Mark Carney, you mean?
Yeah, Mark Carney is if I can say, Mark Carney is intelligent, well-informed, actually an economist, and also has a sense of humor, every one of which would disqualify him for a major leadership role in the United States. But anyway, but he owes it. The Liberal Party in Canada was facing electoral doom until Trump started talking about we should annex Canada.
Yes.
And now Carney is a successful prime minister, and this is happening elsewhere as well. So yeah, but you do need. The United States is not a full-on enemy, and most people in the United States are not enemies. But Trump and the people around him really dislike actually everything that's good about Europe.
Yeah. This week, European Parliament ratified a trade deal between the EU and the US. We see pictures here of a meeting last year between Ursula von der Leyen and Donald Trump. Do you think that's important, that this trade deal is there? Will it benefit us in Europe? Or is this just the only way we can deal with Trump to make sure this economic relationship sustains at least?
I think the deal was a mistake. Yes, it may forestall some U.S. tariffs, but one thing I hope that people have figured out is that for Trump, a solemnly signed agreement is a suggestion. He routinely violates. I mean, the whole Trump trade war, aside from being illegal, even under U.S. law, which has been a source of instability, is clearly illegal under international law. The trade agreements, the trading system that Trump just ripped up wasn't just something that we were doing because we felt it was the right idea. It was agreements. We signed elaborate agreements with many of the world's countries, including the European Union. So if Trump has torn up one deal, he can tear up the next one anytime he feels like it. And I think that Europe was. I understand that people were really shocked in the moment by the Trump trade war, but I think conceding to him was a mistake, and will just encourage more. And maybe you buy a few months' peace with this latest thing. And along the way, by the way, this is a violation of Europe's treaties. Europe has made agreements with the rest of the world that assure them of most favored nation status. Basically, it has signed agreements that say that all of the countries with whom we have trade deals will be treated the same, and then they give special treatment to the United States. Well, that's actually a violation of Europe's agreements. It's not on the same scale as what Trump has done, but I was unhappy to see. I was kind of hoping that Europe would, in the end, just say, "No, the hell with this." Yeah. But all right, with water under the bridge. But looking forward, no more. Von der Leyen needs to say to Trump, "You don't have the cards." The United States really does not have that kind of economic leverage.
I think that Europe was so afraid that Trump was unwilling to sell weapons to Europe, which we would give to Ukraine, that we were almost prepared to sign every trade deal, and this was a very bad one.
Yeah, and by the way, among the things we've learned is that the superiority of U.S. weapons is kind of not as absolute as people might have imagined. Again, this is sort of not my area, but obviously I'm paying attention. And my God, Trump went to war against what should be a fourth-rate power and lost.
To sum up our conversation for now, because you also portrayed a pretty bleak picture of the situation in the United States at the moment. Do you see a glimpse of hope as well when it comes to your own country, when it comes to the state of democracy? Is there an era you can see coming after Trump that might change things for the good as it was in the past, maybe?
Oh, yeah. If I had to say this past year, I'm much more hopeful about the future of the United States than I was a year ago. Because it's turned out that there is a deeper reservoir of decency in ordinary people in the United States than I think many of us realize. And I'm not just talking about polling and elections, but I don't know how much people in Europe were following the events in Minnesota. But we had this full-on assault that was on a community that was based upon the belief that as long as you were going after people who looked and sounded different, that that white non-Hispanic Americans wouldn't care. And it was totally wrong. The community totally rallied around basic human decency. It turns out that the general American public is a lot better than the people who want to destroy us think they are. And now, is that enough? That remains to be seen. But I have to say that a lot of people, kind of when Trump, was returned to the throne, just said, "Okay, that's it. That's the future. We are on that. We're on a path towards one-party rule." And not so easy, actually. It turns out that there's a lot more pushback. So no, I'm much more hopeful about that for the United States than I was, but I'm not confident. I'm still scared as hell. But I think the possibility of it going right is much stronger than we feared.
Paul Krugman.
Dankjewel weer voor het kijken naar Europa Draait Door op YouTube. Als je nog vragen hebt, stel ze dan lekker in de comments hieronder. Wat vond jij van het betoog van Paul Krugman? Laat het ons weten. Heel graag tot volgende week.